What up, Cooks? It's your boy, the Hater. And in the sea of garbage that is the current wrestling landscape, the Hater decided to give props where props are due. And nowadays, the only one that deserves props is Drew McIntyre, let's be honest, right? Lashley is in a jobber faction that is just an embarrassment to wrestling in all kinds of capacities, right? Remember when they introduced that faction? It's like Lashley walks in and he's wearing a suit, and then the Street Profits come in wearing suits, and everyone's like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, you hear like Michael Cole being like, oh, what could be going on there? I'll tell you what could be going on there. The beginning of a jobber faction, right? Meanwhile, Drew McIntyre continues to improve in his weak point, which is the mic, right? Furthermore, Drew McIntyre is being booked in a way that I think is wonderful, right? He's one of the only wrestlers that, in my opinion, is being booked properly, right? This idea that he's a heel is being challenged and undermined by the fact that he's not doing anything wrong anymore. Now, I know that's not intentional because WWE writers aren't that smart, but that's how it comes off, to me at least, right? He comes out, Sheamus comes out, buries him for no reason, right? Sheamus is like, you lost the title, right? And then Drew McIntyre is like, what the fuck? I thought we were friends, right? And while you've been gaining weight, which I didn't even notice, to be honest, right? He's like, everyone's making fun of you, and I stood up for you, right? To me, this was quite powerful, right? Because it's like, Drew McIntyre comes off as like the real friend, and Sheamus comes off as like the fucking sycophant, right? He's like, I don't care what they say about me, right? Okay, then why the fuck should Drew McIntyre care what you say about him? All their friends. So what, right? One is being a douchebag. Like, imagine if you failed at something, and your friend's like, hey, man, you failed, right? And you're like, oh, that's great, bro, because when people were making fun of you, like, I defended you, and here you are making fun of me, right? That's number one. Number two, Drew McIntyre's little feud with CM Punk. Now, this is probably because I don't like CM Punk, but the truth is the truth regardless, right? CM Punk is costing Drew McIntyre opportunities, right? He's ruining his life. Drew McIntyre, as far as I can tell, has never laid a hand on CM Punk, right? Obviously at the Royal Rumble, and maybe the Raw after that, but that's a while ago, right? That's like before WrestleMania, you know what I mean? So in this new season of wrestling, Drew McIntyre, in my opinion, is being victimized, right? CM Punk has caused him to lose the title, and then caused him to lose the number one contenders match, and continues to be a thorn in his side. So in my opinion, Drew McIntyre once again comes off looking great, right? The promos that he's cut, the intensity that he shows, to me, are attributes, right? They're attributes that suggest that Drew McIntyre should be pushed to the main event. Now, he's definitely a mid-carder. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, right? He was drafted in the 4th round, which is criminal, in my opinion, right? AJ Styles being drafted in the 4th round, criminal. He's the number one contender. He's going to be in the main event. And you have like people like Bianca Belair, who was in a 6-woman tag match, in a throwaway, meaningless tag match on WrestleMania, being drafted first. Doesn't make any sense. Fine. Bianca Belair, fine. But what about Jade Cargill, who was in the same meaningless tag match? You'd think that this meaningless tag match was like Stone Cold and The Rock tag teaming together the way that they're portraying it. Nevertheless, Drew McIntyre is taking his bumps, he's taking his lumps as well, and he's out there trying to put himself over, and in my opinion, it's going to work very well. Now, with all that being said, there's another thing that made me realize how great Drew McIntyre is. There was a random throwaway little segment backstage where Booker T is talking and Drew McIntyre shows up. I don't even know what he said because I fast forwarded because I don't care, right? Because I know it's going to be some draft bullshit or I hate CM Punk. But Booker T, who is a large man, right? Drew McIntyre just towered over him, right? He's just bigger and stronger and better looking and just more aesthetically pleasing as a wrestler than even Booker T, who is a legend, right? And this goes to show you what he would look like if you put him next to like Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn or fucking, Tyler Bate, right? It's like, they're not even the same species at this point, right? The way I see it is like this. Braun Strowman comes back and it's like, in what world does Braun Strowman have any challenges in this company? In what world, right? Realistically, he would beat the shit out of everyone. Let's be honest, right? Oh, but Lashley was in Bellator. That's great. Lashley would have a shot for sure because he's a big, big motherfucker and he's strong and he also was an MMA fighter. However, there's a point, as we've established many times on this channel, where size doesn't matter. But the only person, like fine, you can put Lashley in there. The only other person that looks like they have a chance against Braun Strowman is Drew McIntyre, right? Like if Braun Strowman wanted to go after Cody Rhodes, there would be nothing stopping him, and it would be absurd to have Cody Rhodes beat Braun Strowman. You could get away with Randy Orton, you could get away with Cena, but I don't think Cody Rhodes can hit the crossroads on Braun Strowman because it requires some strength to hold the guy up like that, especially if he's a big motherfucker, right? So it's like, at least John Cena could lift Braun Strowman, because he's John Cena, you know what I'm saying? The Rock, all these other guys can do their finishers on him. Cody Rhodes is going to have to beat him with like the disaster kick, just like he used to beat Great Khali, where it's just absurd. It's like, what's going on here, right? So Drew McIntyre fits the paradigm. He definitely fits the minimum requirement of being a WWE champion, right? They're firing the big dudes. They fired Jinder. They fired a bunch of big guys. And anyone else that is resembling any kind of size, some unjustly and some justly, are being turned into jobbers, right? Karrion Kross is a prominent example, but he is a jobber, so who cares, right? They're not going after these big guys. So by comparison, you have a roster where Drew McIntyre is forced to go out there and have competitive matches against, quite frankly, lower men like Xavier Woods and Johnny Gargano, right? Where it's like in real life, Drew McIntyre would tear these guys apart in 2 seconds, and he wouldn't even blink doing it. Now, the other good thing about Drew McIntyre, as if these weren't enough reasons, is that Drew McIntyre is out there playing into this, right? He's this menacing motherfucker, right? And he's all about beating people's asses. Now, do I think he would benefit from a gimmick? Probably, right? I think almost everyone would. However, it is what it is. He doesn't have a gimmick, and that's just how it is, and that's how it's going to be, right? But when you have people like Carmelo Hayes, right, being drafted before Drew McIntyre and Ilya Dragunov and these other like 5'5" guys, is just absurd. Like Carmelo Hayes and Ilya Dragunov, they're both like 5'6" at most. I think they're built like 5'10" or 5'8" or something, but they're like 5'5". They're tiny dudes, right? You look at Drew McIntyre, you're like, what the fuck? What species is this guy from? As I always like to say, if they found Carmelo Hayes buried in the same mass grave as Drew McIntyre, they would just assume that Carmelo Hayes was like Drew McIntyre's like plaything. You know what I'm saying? They'd be like, oh, the big guy must have kept the little guy around to fuck him or something, right? That's what they would assume if they found just their skeletons, right? Because it's like, holy shit, look how big this motherfucker is. Now, the good news is that Drew McIntyre is, despite the fact that he was drafted low, he is someone that is being put in the main event, right? Insofar as like the main event can possibly go. In my opinion, it's criminal that he's not in the Backlash card as far as I know, right? This is unacceptable, right? One of the biggest problems with WWE is that nowadays they have these premium live events where it's like 4 or 5 matches. Like I think there's only 5 matches in the Backlash card, right? One of them is fucking AJ Styles versus Cody Rhodes, which could be a good match. I'm looking forward to it, kind of. I'm probably not going to watch it, but if I were watching it, I'd look forward to that match. But again, it's two X Division guys. Like, call it what you want. AJ Styles is an X Division guy, you know what I mean? Then you've got on the other side of the coin, you got Damian Priest, who is big, but he's just not as big as Drew McIntyre, right? He doesn't look as strong. He doesn't look as believable. And more importantly, I think the most important thing is, because, I can get behind Damian Priest, right? If he changed how he is, right? He's a big guy, he's muscular, but he's nothing special, right? Like, you would never really think that Damian Priest has any shot at beating, like, Braun Strowman, and you would never think that he has any shot at beating Drew McIntyre in real life. Like, you would never think that, right? But, of course, compared to, like, Jey Uso, he looks like a main eventer, right? But the problem is, another element that often doesn't get talked about enough is masculinity. You also have to be masculine, right? Back in the day, every champion was masculine. And the ones that weren't masculine enough, even though by today's standards they would be like super masculine, like Shawn Michaels, right? He was jacked. He was, cut like almost nobody has more definition than prime Shawn Michaels, right? There was some years where he was a little chubby, but, generally speaking, his arms were always like lean as fuck, so he looked like a beast. And furthermore, because he was the way he was presented as effeminate. That was part of his gimmick, right? Because it's like, oh, the only way we can justify the fact that this guy's effeminate is by making him be an effeminate wrestler, right? Everybody else just looked like a man because they were men, right? Damian Priest does not, right? He looks weird. He's like wearing eyeshadow and he's got like hair extensions. It's like, who is this? Is this Damian Priest? Or is it like Lola Vice from NXT? I can't tell sometimes, cucks. So with all that being said, it's like, you look at him, and you look at Drew McIntyre, and you're like, oh, Drew McIntyre is like a proper man. Like, this guy looks like he can kick your ass. He acts like he can kick your ass, right? He doesn't have any shortcomings in terms of, like, his emotional stability, right? A lot of these guys are like, I don't know if I can do it. Like Sami Zayn, it's like, you can't get behind someone who isn't sure of themselves, right? I always make this comparison. If you ever watched Walking Dead, like the main character for the first like whatever seasons I stopped watching, of course, Rick, right? Rick is like the leader of the people most of the time, I think, in Walking Dead, right? And every 3 fucking episodes, this cocksucker is like, I don't know if I can lead. I don't know if I'm fit to be a leader. And it's like, well, if you're gonna keep fucking saying this every 3 episodes, it's unrealistic that you continue to be the leader, right? Someone would have been like, no, you're right. You're not fit to lead because you're a bitch. All you do is complain about how it's hard to be a leader. Drew McIntyre doesn't give off these vibes. And that's why, motherfucks and friends, that's why Drew McIntyre fucking rules. He gets the haters' stamp of approval. Cock sucks.